Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is Matthew Dickson, who is on the Mind Aid Bike Ride in support of mental health awareness and schizophrenia awareness. Thank you, Matthew, so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is great.
I know you're now in New Brunswick. You started in Vancouver in early June, and you're going to be heading to Newfoundland shortly, taking this tour all the way across Canada, and you're nearly finished, but what an incredible journey you've been on. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like to be on the road for the entire summer?
I absolutely love it. I biked across Canada when I was 20, and I wanted to do more fun stuff like that with my life, but at 22 I got schizophrenia, and that took my life down a whole different direction. And after pushing 30 years of recovery, I slowly got better over the years, and the last couple of years I thought I've been feeling pretty good. So this spring, Kurt Gummichel, who's biking across Canada this summer,
a well-known town councillor here in St. Andrews, avid biker. Is that what inspired you?
Well, he said the previous summer that he wanted to bike across Canada this summer, and this past March, I was talking to him, and I was walking around town afterwards, and I thought, Matthew, you're feeling pretty good these days. Why don't you just go and do it? So I had time off from work, but I didn't have the funds to do it, and I thought maybe if I set up like a GoFundMe page or something. I thought, I've been talking about doing this trip again for years, and I didn't want people thinking, oh, what's this Matthew talking about biking across Canada for the umpteenth time. I thought if I could get myself out there with half-decent gear, a decent, semi-decent plan, and to show that I'm serious, I'm not just talking about it, I want to do this trip. So I used the bike I already had. It wasn't the best bike for it. I had the half-decent gear, half-decent plan, and I started biking. I got myself out there and I started biking. I had a bit of money to start, but I didn't have enough money to continue. So, like magic, people started donating. For the first month or so, I often didn't have enough money for the next day. I thought, well, tomorrow night for campground fees, I don't know if I've got enough money to stay someplace. But like magic, money just kept coming in. And the last month or so, I've had even some larger donations of like $500 and whatnot, and which has taken some of the money stress off me. And I'm just having the time of my life. It's for some strange reason, I know the vast majority of people don't bike across Canada, but I am in my element. For some strange reason, I thrive in that environment. I did it before, and I'm enjoying it just as much again. This time I'm adding advocacy to it, putting on some events. I've only put on, with the help of somebody else, one event in Saskatchewan. I had an event in Collingwood, Ontario that was cancelled because of staff shortages with the people there. I had an event in Woodstock, New Brunswick, and Fredericton, and Oromocto, and St. John, and tonight actually in St. Andrews. Then I've got an event in Sussex and Moncton. Then I'm going by the seat of my pants with these. Charlottetown, Nova Scotia, nothing officially lined up yet for events. But Newfoundland, they're very excited to have me show up there, and they're working on getting me out in public. And I already have a place to stay in Gander.
Wow. So, I can't tell you how many times this summer, obviously you and I talked about the idea of this in the spring, and then you made it a reality really quickly, but I can't tell you how many people have sent me. The last one came in my brother said, have you heard of this guy Matthew Dickson? I'm like, do you watch my show? He said he's going to be in St. Andrews tonight. So there's this word of mouth that's just spreading across social media about your epic journey. So are so many of the events that are happening around your trip sort of popping up along the way, as well as media interest? I know that you're here today. You were doing a newspaper article this morning. I've seen you on CBC in different outlets as you've made this trip across our country.
Yeah, so I found one of the easiest ways to get in media was like local newspapers and some radio stations across Canada. I did get on CBC Radio Manitoba. I might be on a larger CBC publication that's still in the works. I'm really hoping for that. That'll be like national. And yeah, it's been, the media's been easier for me to do. Sometimes it's amazing how much biking, eating, sleeping, and navigating take up just brain power throughout your day. I have a bit of downtime in the mornings when I first wake up to just not do anything. You're just always doing something, doing, and I'm really not used to that. But I've been doing it for 2.5 months now, and so I have been able to call some media as I go by. Sometimes I forget, I just don't have time because of other things going on. But the events, the New Brunswick events and Newfoundland so far, really looking forward to that. Before I started this trip, it was COVID for a few years, and I started my advocacy work for MindAid in 2018. So I didn't have a ton of in-person experience, like speaking in person. But with COVID, a fair bit of online, like podcast interviews and whatnot. So I'm new to speaking to groups of people, IRL in real life, but I want to get better at it. And people have been commenting on my YouTube channel, the videos I've been making on the trip, because they say, Matthew, you can see yourself progress, get more confident, better people skills as I've been going across the country. It was tough talking to people about schizophrenia, and I've gotten better at it through the trip. I was so scared to utter that word in public for 30 years, and this has been a real growth period for me the last couple months, just getting used to saying the word out loud in public. And the response has been, I usually get two responses: either I don't know much about it, or I know someone who has it. And when I mentioned the schizophrenia, the fundraiser this is a fundraiser for the Provincial National Schizophrenia Societies, and when I mentioned that, people say, oh, that's a great cause.
You get to put your finger really on the pulse of the whole country when you do something like this. Did you find that when people came out to hear you speak, that the questions, were there similarities, were there common threads in the questions people had for you, or the conversations that you had with Canadians?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is people just don't know much about it, and I sort of go into my role of like explaining some stats, like some I've shared already. I have sort of my speech down pat, I guess you could say. What I really enjoyed is hearing other people's stories about what they're going through. So many people just don't get a chance to share, but like tell their life story and whatnot, and to let someone just voice, what they're going through, to sit with somebody for a while, and just be. I haven't met many people with schizophrenia over 30 years, and to meet some along the way, that's new for me. That's actually new for me because we all hide. And I don't know how many people I've passed in my 30 years on cars on the highway or in the mall or wherever who have schizophrenia walking right by me, and I have no idea.
So did people come out on this tour that you're on right now, this bike trip, with schizophrenia to meet you and have those conversations?
Some. I wish I could have met more people. It's on a bike you can kind of just breeze through places kind of unknown, and I was myself, somewhere around, I forget, it was the prairies or northern Ontario, and I said, I think I might have the confidence now to put my website on the back of my safety vest. But leaving Vancouver, I didn't have the courage to do that.
Right.
So part of it was me. I think I can bike across Canada, but you never know 100% for sure. So part of it was just me doing this trip in the first place with schizophrenia. That's another thing. I'm the first person with schizophrenia to do this trip. The talking about it, I was entering brand new territory for me, and it was I didn't know how it would go, but I slowly improved. So I did meet some people with schizophrenia, and the conversations are usually short with a lot of people. I don't get a chance to sit down for 2 hours with someone and chat. But I want to do more of this. Do more events across Canada speaking, or I'm working with the Schizophrenia Society of New Brunswick to brainstorm ways, like, can I go into, I talked about this with them last winter, can we go into a busy street like St. John or Toronto and just have conversations with people, film it and say, look, this is us talking with strangers about schizophrenia. They're not running away, no pitchforks. And broadcast that. I've thought of having a survey done where we can survey thousands of Canadians and ask them, what do you think about schizophrenia? Have an official document saying, look, we don't think people with schizophrenia we're not afraid of them. We most of us know someone who has it. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that. There's so much I don't know about what's going on in Canada. There's so many stories I haven't heard from people living with the disease, and I'd love to do more of that, meet more people and go places, and yeah.
What are some of the, and I know you and I have had long conversations about this before, but what on this trip specifically, are there certain myths about schizophrenia that you find you are empowered to shed light on that they aren't true?
The biggest one I highlight is the violence one. It's hallucinations. Some people, I'm in the 25% of people that don't hallucinate. Some people ask, well, what are your symptoms? And a lot of people say, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine that, what it's like, and the conversation's usually shorter. I wish I could spend more time with people, but yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much more wish I could have done with this trip, and I'm just happy to have any sort of involvement with people. So I'm loving what I've gotten.
Can we talk a little bit about how far are you traveling every day? Because to me, maybe this is just my lack of motivation to bike across Canada showing. But I thought, this seems soon. Could I bike across Canada in 2 months like you have? I don't think I could. How far are you going every day?
I try to keep it around 100 kilometers a day. The farthest I've gone so far on this trip is 160. The 130 kilometers is a longer day. 150 is starting to get it's long. It just takes time, so I keep it around 100 if I can. And I haven't announced this. I'll do that here. And I've known, when I biked across Canada before, I knew a guy who did no training for the trip. He lost 30 pounds, quit smoking, showed up and started biking. He was slow for the first month, but after that he was flying with the rest of us. A book, Miles from Nowhere by Barbara Savage, I think her name was. They did no training and they biked around the world. The first 2 weeks they were sore, and after that they were fine. So I did training. The Tour de Canada, which I did before, their training is 3 months before the trip. Do 3 rides a week from 10 kilometers working up to 100 kilometers over 12 weeks. And I was trying to follow that this spring. Here's my announcement. I missed about half my rides. I did a loop around the town here, the 5 kilometer around the town loop. The most I did was 18 laps so it was about 90 kilometers that I did. And when I did that, I thought, I'm feeling pretty good. I can probably do this. So I got out to BC with missing at least half my training rides, but I still did it. The heat and the humidity and the hills in some parts of BC drained me. I've since learned that with humidity, the body can't perspire. So you're okay out there exercising, but then it hits you afterwards. So that hit me. But I've done this trip with I missed a lot of training, but I wanted to show people that it's possible. I've been saying to people for years, it's not as hard as you think. The physical part of it, it's not as hard as you think. And the body can adapt very quickly to doing long, slow, steady state cardio on a bike. If I was walking or running this, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I'd have been in a hospital back in BC, back at the start. But biking is so much easier on the body. And it's a spinning. You see the people in the Tour de France, and they're grinding up the hills, standing up, just flying up the hills, putting everything they've got into it. I'm not doing that. You see me on a bike going up a hill. I'm in my granny here, just slowly spinning. And that's all it is. That's all I'm ever doing is just slowly spinning the whole way across Canada. I'm not winning any time records at all. The world record for going across Canada is 12 days. 16 hours a day, pushing almost 40 kilometers an hour.
Gosh. It took me 12 days to do it in a car once. And thank goodness for the prairies, I imagine, when you're biking. You get that flat break in the middle.
Well, with the flat break, it's you don't get a lot of downhills to get a break from biking, so you're biking, always spinning a lot of the time. There are hills there. Yeah. The other thing is that when you bike from Calgary to Winnipeg, other cross-Canada cyclists said this, it's just a tiny grade up for 5 miles, and you get to the peak, And then you look up and there's another one and another one. And it's, what is this? I actually want to Google elevation of Calgary versus Winnipeg to see if it actually is a fair bit higher, because that's what it feels like.
So I can't imagine what it's like to organize a trip like this. Was there a car following you? How did you know where you were going to stay every night? How did that work?
I roughly followed my itinerary from the last time I did it. I still have it on a piece of paper. And I tweaked it and changed things around somewhat.
Yep, it's pre-GPS, the first time.
We had letters and payphones in 1992. That was our technology. So with a phone, with Google Maps, it's easier. I downloaded all the Google Maps onto my phone, so I didn't have to use data to use them. I did have paper maps in my bags, just in case. But it was... I just went by the seat of my pants. Often I didn't know where I was staying the next day. I'd get to camp that night. I'm like, I don't know my route for tomorrow. But you just figure it out as you go. And it's...
Would you have a tent? Is that how you...
I had a tent, a sleeping bag. I stayed, for the most part, in campgrounds. Sometimes people bought me a hotel room and whatnot, which was great to get out of the... Just... I slept, with coyotes and wolves howling sometimes. I slept in bear country. It makes me a little, they're just there out there, and your tent's just like Kleenex. I yearn for like thick walls,
Were there some moments though, like pinch me moments along the way where you were just experiencing something? I think so many of us Canadians never get the chance to do that, to feel that unity of our country because it's so vast, because it's so different. It's the same and it's different everywhere you go. Were there moments on it that were just so epically amazing that they stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the mountains. The mountains in BC and Alberta, I just love those. So to be in them was phenomenal. The prairies are beautiful. I mean, people, when you drive across it, I can see it. I've never done that. I've biked across it twice, never driven across the prairies. Biking across it when you're out there, it's beautiful. It's the birds. I haven't mentioned this anywhere online, I don't think. The bird song at the edge of the road on the prairies, I was amazed by the number of birds there. And what happens is, there's trees around small communities, and so a lot of the birds, I'm assuming, cluster to these wooded areas around communities. I was in this tiny place called Aylesbury, Saskatchewan, probably 30 or 50 people. The bird songs, it's all dense. I listen to birds, just constant, a symphony of bird song all day long. And I wished I'd recorded it. They weren't, exotic birds. There were some I hadn't heard before. It wasn't like the jungle sound, but it was just so beautiful just to hear constant bird song, hundreds of birds singing all day long in this massive choir or something. It was phenomenal. That's really something I think people should hear.
When you put your story out there like this, I want to ask you this because I think a lot of people who might not suffer from mental illness, I also hate saying the word suffer because a lot of people with mental illness, it's not suffering. It seems like a verb that we choose to use because it's common, but I think that can also lead to a misconception too, but that's a whole other show. But they don't realize the importance of not just putting your story out there for other people, but what it can do for you. To maybe take the shame away, stigma away for you living with schizophrenia, when you're able to own your own story and feel that comfort level, sharing it with others. How does it change? You change other people's lives by being open, for sure, but it also can be extremely empowering for the person living with a mental illness.
Yeah, my confidence has grown a lot with this, and I'm happier doing things I love. It's people have commented they've seen me improve through the videos, my YouTube videos, and I'm just wanting to tackle more. There's a book called The Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden. There's another book I think called Atomic Habits, which is kind of the same thing. I haven't read that one, but they say that small actions give you confidence. Don't wait for the confidence to take action. People think, well, I need this lightning bolt of inspiration before I go and do something. No, just a tiny action. It's often like a phone call or a message to someone, simply having conversations about what you want to tackle in life. whatever it is. And all these little things will give you a little bit of confidence. And like building a brick wall or a brick house, just another brick, and pretty soon you've got a whole room or a whole wall. It's like, oh, look at that. And your confidence slowly, I can feel my confidence slowly building, especially with MindAid over the last 5 years now. And with this bike ride, it's growing even faster. But it's wonderful to just say, well, maybe I could do that. And then one day you're on the phone doing this, talking to somebody or whatever, and having these effects, whereas like I'm doing things now that I couldn't do last winter, and I'm doing things now that I couldn't even think about like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to just to feel more able-bodied and break these limiting beliefs we have in ourselves. And I mean, if I was able to do this bike trip 4 years ago, maybe I would have had this bigger boost of confidence. So yeah. The other thing is that when I biked across Canada the first time, I could feel the confidence in me, like, wow, I actually did that, like, wow. And then I got schizophrenia, and I remember thinking, I thought, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can go through schizophrenia, but I thought, maybe if I biked across Canada, maybe I could get through schizophrenia. And you never know, by doing these things, how to help you in the future. I think they're just like tools in your toolkit, or I don't know, a confidence bank. I just made that up. A confidence bank in you with deposits and withdrawals. This stuff all helps for resilience, and mental illness can be prevented. We don't talk about that a whole lot, but I've read that mental illness can be prevented. And even though you don't have a mental illness per se, if you work on improving your mental health, it can help you not get depression or anxiety or whatever. There's tools out there that we could all learn to just improve and prevent a lot of this stuff.
I don't want to downplay the times that schizophrenia has been hard in your life. I know you've compared it to walking through falling glass when it was at its worst, but you really take this message on the road of what life can be like with schizophrenia that is different than what I think the average public perception is. There's this idea that schizophrenia must always be this debilitating, hearing voices, kind of a plague on a person's life. And you show us a very different idea of how it can be. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it's been like for you living with schizophrenia in recent years, where you are, biking across Canada is obviously this pinnacle moment that showcases what a life a person with schizophrenia can lead. But you are living a life very different than what I imagine the average person thinks schizophrenia is.
There's an article online called The 7 Myths of Schizophrenia that the Schizophrenia Society of Canada head person Chris Somerville told me about years ago. I went looking for it recently, I couldn't find it, but maybe I'm just not looking in the right places again. But it said one of the myths is people with schizophrenia, like you said, don't recover. That's a myth. They say many people can recover, and the disease can sometimes leave people later in their life, like maybe 40s or 50s and whatnot. Maybe that's what's happening with me. Maybe the disease is just leaving me. I am still on medication. You're going to have a hard time getting me off my medication. But the other thing is that I worked on my recovery. If I didn't work on my recovery, that lessens my chances of getting better. So I'm going to argue the disease may leave later in life, but you're going to have to work on your recovery in order for that to happen. And I met a guy in Alberta, I think, and at a campground. He said, I've got a friend, he passed away, he was older, he had schizophrenia, he lived later in his life, he said he was fine. He said, right as rain. He had no symptoms. And I know another guy with schizophrenia in Peterborough. Actually I forget the town right now, but Kingston. And he says, I feel pretty darn good. And I'm just thinking, that's the handful of people I know. How many other people? One thing I thought of doing is reaching out to some larger schizophrenia organizations that have large mailing lists and say, look, how many people can submit a story about them doing well? And because I know it's not the be-all and end-all to recover. Some people might not get back to 100%, and I don't want them to feel bad about that because they can't be 100%. There's other things where you can find enjoyment in life that you it's not the be all and end all. But for people who have recovered, I'm sure there's lots of people out there who'd like to know.
Yeah.
What are the stats? Tell me some stories about people who are enjoying life again and happy.
So tell us in our last couple of minutes about the last leg of your journey. Where will you go?
So I'm off to Sussex, Moncton, Charlottetown, New Glasgow, and then 2 days in Cape Breton. I'll take the ferry. That's my next rest day, the ferry to Newfoundland. I'll go to Port aux Basques, and then I'm thinking about 11 days across Newfoundland to St. John's along the Trans-Canada Highway. The Schizophrenia Society of Newfoundland and Labrador says a lot of people go through Canada on these trips, but they don't go to Labrador as much. So I'm working on going up there. I probably won't bike up there. It'll be a week up to bike and then a week back, plus going over to Labrador on the ferry. They might just drive me up there. We're working on that to visit some people in Labrador. But I've got a place to stay in Gander already, and I'm really looking forward to the hospitality there. The rest of the Maritimes, I'm really looking forward to it all. So.
Well, you've talked about taking steps to build that confidence, but I just want you to know that we truly appreciate that and know that it's these small steps that truly do change the world. They're a brick in the path of progress, and I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing and for taking the time to come in and tell us about it today.
Well, I have to say, I wouldn't be doing this without the donations from people. I didn't have the funds to do it. So I'm just, I sometimes don't get back to certain comments because I'm just so emotionally touched by them. Like on Facebook and YouTube, the people who've helped and donated such kind comments and large donations. And I'm just speechless sometimes, and I don't know what to say. I wouldn't be doing this without, a lot of support has come from Charlotte County. And I'm just over the moon about that. And anyway, if I keep talking about it, I'm going to cry. So.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for being here today. And I'll remind people at home that you've still got many days left on the road. So I'll put your website up as well to let people know where they can donate. But thanks for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. So good to be back here for a day.
My guest today has been Matthew Dickson, who is riding across Canada in support of Mind Aid, raising awareness for mental health and schizophrenia. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.